Lewis, congratulations on your appointment and on your party's success in the recent elections just five weeks ago.
Yep.
So very new in role. Can you tell us a little bit about your role? It's a very comprehensive title. Perhaps you could tell us a bit about it.
Where do we start? I think over the past few weeks, Emmanuel and I have been working really closely on our presentations together because my role is all about the public sector in Wales and how we are going to develop. And a lot of my comments build on precisely what Emmanuel's been talking about in terms of AI and how that might apply even more broadly in leadership across the public sector in Wales. It was brilliant. But I would really ask you to think about those questions about AI and how we operate as a public sector, a voluntary sector, a third sector in Wales. So what does the role entail? There is a chunk of the role that deals with the Welsh Constitution and the Government of Wales and what are the powers that Wales has and how that works. And I was in Stormont yesterday with Michelle O'Neill and the First Minister of Northern Ireland, Deputy First Minister of Scotland, and we were supposed to have Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, with us of the UK. He had other things to do, apparently, in Westminster. But we were there discussing the constitutional future of the nations of the UK and how Wales could get its fair share of resources and have the powers to make a difference to people's lives. So that's the constitution bit. Yeah. But here, I think the more interesting bit, maybe, is the government effectiveness bit. And I'm tempted now just to stay quiet for 2 minutes.
Well, dive in.
I won't stay quiet for 2 minutes, but there's a challenge there, I think, for us all to think about how we've reached a point where people in Wales have lost trust and faith in the political system. I'm not talking about party politics or any party here, but in public authority and in the public sector, some of us may have, the population at large have lost trust in public authorities to deliver on their behalf. Yeah? So that's the challenge. How do we collectively, over the next decade and more, in a world that is getting increasingly more complex, increasingly more challenging, address that challenge and make sure that when we're taking action as government, it isn't activity for activity's sake. It isn't doing what we've always done. It's taking meaningful action to make differences to people's lives. So that, and sorry, Charlotte, this is kind of this is the challenge for us all. In 4 years' time, certainly challenge for us all as cabinet ministers. In 4 years' time, two friends walk into a bar, and one turns to the other and says, "Oh, that bloody Welsh government, up to no good again." And their friend turns to them and says, "Oh, I used to think that, but you know that dodgy hip I had. I was seen by my local hospital within 3 months and they sorted it out and I'm back in work now." Or, Johnny Bach just had a young child, he's now got free childcare. Or, those jobs we were looking for, my son has just had a new apprenticeship, or whatever it is. But people in a large amount can identify tangible change that we, each one of us, as public sector leaders, delivers. And that is going to be, if I can get anywhere close to that, I can retire happily in 4 years' time, yeah? But that's what we can achieve. The answers aren't here, they're here. And collectively, I think we can do something special. I might get into a whole heap of trouble trying to do it, because it is about listening. It is about being out there. It is about, in some things, there's a heck of a lot of uncertainty here. There are plans, we know where we want to get to, but how we get there, what we do, how we build them, I do not know. Yeah? I hopefully won't see a headline in the papers tomorrow morning, government minister says he doesn't know. Yeah? But we don't, I mean, as leaders, we don't know the answers to all of the questions, but we know where we want to go, we know what the challenges are, and we are getting there to knowing what the challenges are, and collectively we can try and answer them. Sorry, Charlotte, it was a bit of a long answer, but I think in a way it was inspired by the talk earlier and by what we're trying to do, particularly in that, I think, really interesting part of the role.
Yeah. Stick with the trust one, because it's huge, isn't it? You know, we see politicians change their mind on things. They start out with a certain mandate, and things, you know, have to shift and change. And that demoralises publics, doesn't it? They begin to then think, well, we can't trust. He said, Cabinet Minister Davies said that last week, and now he's saying something different. How do we, you know, how are we going to deal with that? Because it says something about us as a public as well, doesn't it? As publics, not only as leaders.
I think there's probably two aspects to it. One is that it does require, is it a little more bravery from our politicians, hopefully including myself, to talk about those challenges, but to talk about the challenges in terms of, A, their complexities, and B, their trade-offs, yeah? Because there is no magic money tree stood out there. I'm sorry to tell people there isn't one. And therefore, when you look at budgets and you face it as leaders in your organisations every day, you cannot do everything you would like to do. You cannot devote the resources you would like to the dozen or more priorities you've got. And talking about the trade-offs, talking about those choices more openly, more honestly, maybe more courageously, is something we can do. I also think there's an element then coming back to sort of public sector leadership and what we're trying to do collectively is how we make sure everything we do is as effective and as focused as it can be on delivering outcomes for people. So we ask ourselves, are we passing pieces of paper around, or are we writing good strategies and then patting ourselves, oh, look at this wonderful strategy our board passed. I've done it myself, yeah? I've been a public sector leader in various ways over the last 25 years. Oh, great, the strategy's been passed and no one looks at the strategy for another 5 years. Yeah? Or there's been a great plan put forward. We've got to develop how we do things. We've got to recognise where we are and develop how we do things as a public sector. Mm-hmm.
So you've got this lovely opportunity here with this leadership group in the public sector. And I know that in your opener, you know, the first 100 days you were talked about developing skills and fostering a unity of purpose and vision through as part of that, developing the National School of Government. Can you tell us a bit about what that means and what it will mean for people who are here today?
Yeah, what and I've had a couple of roles in relation to how we develop public sector leadership in Wales. I've had many conversations with Kerry and the team at Academy Wales. There are elements here in terms of how there are at least two elements to it. The first one is that do we share public sector priorities right across the public sector and the broader third sector in Wales? And do we act with unity of purpose that reflects the fact that we are one Welsh Public Service rather than individual organisations? I don't think we do. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think we can all think of examples where, oh, it'd be great if we could work with the Health Board here or with Transport for Wales here. I mean, these are all sort of really important organisations, but they operate here and here and here, and bringing leaders together. That means career pathways that go through different organisations and sectors. Yeah? So that somebody might start in a health board and then go Welsh Government, local government, transport, housing associations. There are a whole range of things there. So people are developed in that public service for Wales and for the people of Wales. So I think there's an element there. I also think there's more that we could be doing, and we've been having really positive discussions around these aspects in terms of developing our future cadre of public sector leaders. I mean, there are a number of them here, but if you look around the world to some of the best practice examples, there are significant schools of government that do pipeline development 10, 15 years before somebody becomes a director of their organisation. If I asked you now, you could probably name more junior colleagues who you think have the potential to be chief execs and directors in your organisation in 15 or 20 years' time. But there is the level of support and development for them is not there in a significant way. So those are the kind of things we're looking at. But again, you live here, it's a 20-year time horizon. So those kind of time horizons we need to think about to develop leadership so that we're looking at sort of in that 15 or 20 years' time, some of the decisions that we'll be taking now, I'll be long gone from political life by then, but some of the decisions, hopefully, that I'm taking now will have those positive impacts.
I like that. We have to be good spotters now if we're going to get the returns as we go forward. Now, you were just saying we don't want to standardise too much and we want a bit more of a pliable kind of instrument. How does then that our One Wales Public Service document reflect that, or does it contradict that?
I think what you can do is develop solutions and answers at local or organisational levels that are innovative. I mean, there's an interesting one here about our tolerance of risk. How many of you thought, God, that's a really good idea, but management or the board might not go with it? I mean, can we do something really exciting here? And there's a fear rather than an excitement about making positive and meaningful change to people's lives. So I think there is, you can take those examples at a local level where you can innovate, you can take risks, you can build through test and learn methodologies or other sort of, there are plenty of methodologies there. But I also think then, so that's one element of it, which is sort of that openness to thinking. But I also think there's a role for the public sector, and a role maybe even for Welsh Government to say, actually, we've looked at aspects of, I was speaking to a Social Partnership Council about a health board that has done excellent work on how they deal with minor disciplinary issues. Because they'd had a whole chunk of staff that were off for months and months and months, and almost every one of those disciplinary issues transpired were relatively minor that could have been dealt with quickly. And they changed working with, in social partnership, they changed procedures, and the number of staff that are off on long-term disciplinary sort of full paid leave has fallen dramatically, and they've saved a considerable amount of money. Now, identifying good practice and then expecting every one of the health boards of Wales, for example, to deliver that right across the country, I think is a good way to do it. I mean, it makes no sense that we have 22 different electronic planning systems in Wales at a local government level. Yeah? If you want to apply for planning on one street, it's like this. If you want to apply next door, it doesn't. Yeah? We are a small country. We can innovate. We can be really effective in trying things out. But if we work out what works well, we should also have the gumption to say, actually, this works well, and we're going to do it collectively too. So it's that balance of support, but also broader national strategy.
And I always think of that document as a framework in terms of values. Kind of guidance in terms of, you know, values that are significant to the government, significant to the people of Wales, significant to us. Will there be any tweaks or changes in terms of that? Or we think it's quite robust in that respect?
I think what you're seeing is from the new government, from our new First Minister, you're seeing a articulation of those long-held values of the Welsh public sector, of those long-held values of the Welsh public in a broad sense. And that's not about party politics. That's about sort of the basis of our socio-economic views as a country. So I'd expect those to be built on and built into the public sector across Wales. So there will be tweaks, and I'd expect to see the National School of Government, however we choose to call it in due course, develop and be a really strong focus then for supporting your leadership journeys, but also leadership right across the public sector in Wales.
Are you happy for me to
of course.
take some questions from the floor, please?
Please do.
I have... Sorry, can I just...
There's also, I've found out lately, there's a really good rule in the Senedd that questions last a minute. So I no longer than a minute.
Can I just ask you to pass the microphone to the woman in the yellow?
Oh, thank you.
First, and I will come to you. Yes, sorry.
I noted with interest when you were talking about your priorities on the 23rd of June, so very recently, about having a government that is transparent about the progress it's making, but probably transparent generally. That fills me with hope. But we live in a climate, of course, as part of my role, you'll know I'm in charge of scrutiny and trying to improve that function. And we live, I think, in a social media era, political era, where there are all these gotcha moments when nobody seems to want to be able to admit mistakes or be transparent about things that are going on because the sort of reactive onslaught online is so awful. How do you think how do you think you will navigate that? How will your government navigate that? And what is the advice to the elected members of Wrexham that I should pass on?
Yeah.
Small question.
Yeah, it's tough. And I think you're absolutely right to highlight the challenge there. I said in the Senedd on Tuesday that people had lost trust in the Welsh Government, which I think is unquestionably true if you look at all of the polling evidence. And it was a sort of headline in the newspaper the next morning. And the stuff about how we were going to rebuild trust was almost a footnote. And I think there is a challenge there as to how we communicate and how we deal with things. In terms of transparency, what we've said we're going to do is develop a set of dashboards, if you want to call them, publicly aligned to the priorities of the new government, publish them, work with people to develop them, and so that at least... One of my great worries about politics at the moment is that people can't agree on what the evidence is. Yeah, there are plenty of grounds to disagree. I have colleagues in the Senedd, I have colleagues before who take very different political views. But on the basics of the evidence, I mean, climate change, I mean, we don't need to say it here today, do I, that climate change is happening, yeah, and it is having significant impacts, but there is evidence. So the more we can develop a shared understanding of the evidence and then get into discussions actually based on this evidence, you could eliminate waiting times completely by making significant use of the public sector, by buying in expertise from elsewhere, and it would mean you wouldn't build any new hospitals for the next period. Yeah, there are trade-offs there. That is not easy, particularly in a social media world. It's a challenge we're going to try and address. We're going to see how it goes. In a year's time, I may have been moved on to another post, or we may have made some progress. I hope we'll make some progress. And I do hope there are people right across the political spectrum who recognise that, who recognise that we might get a better politics and a better public discussion if we go along those ways. And there is an advantage too in the Senedd that curious thing for a politician to say, that there will be no majority in the Senedd. because of the way the voting system works, there will not be a majority government. Parties will have to work together from now on until into the far future, and therefore a more thoughtful, a more reflective, a more hopefully action-orientated politics will serve us all well.
We're very conscious of your precious time.
Great.
Can I take one more
Yeah, of course, yeah.
question? Yeah.
So you can tell I used to be an academic. I saw Charlotte last on University of Wales committees
We did.
some years ago, so this is great fun.
Yeah.
Can we just stay for no. I know some of you are going to Kay Newydd to swim afterwards. So, actually, sure, if you wouldn't mind, should we just take 3 questions and then I'll try and wrap up and make some sense of them all.
Can you make your questions snappy? I'm coming I promised you to quick and snappy, and then we'll come to you over there.
I was listening to you with deep respect and interest that you mentioned third sector in your speech. Third sector is a very confusing term. It includes voluntary sector, and it also includes something like Oxfam. Though the managers of Oxfam is on minimum salary 70,000, and we work for nothing for the third sector out of voluntary motive. So my question will be, but we are the nerve center. We engage the community, and we are the community who are disengaged. Around the world, under the democratic policy, people are more and more being disengaged. So we mobilize people. People come to us and question about the government. So can there be a point at the moment? We have been very fortunate in Wales because we are liaising with the chief exec of the WCVA to connect to you. But can there be a point, a point where we can come if we have got any question, and number 1. And number 2, if the government takes any proposal that we will achieve this by 2040, can we know what are the parameters, what are the outcomes government is trying to achieve?
Thank you. Diolch. Can we just take your 2 because we promised to come to your table? Yeah.
Hiya. Nawr dwi mewn trouble.
Na, fi'n mynd I bod yn garedig. Oedd hi'n hyfryd clywed chi'n sôn am arloesedd, a mae angen trafodaeth ynglyn â'r arloesedd ar risg ynglith gwasanaethau cyhoeddus. Mae hwnna'n pwynt gyffredinol. Beth o'n I rili moyn gofyn yw, wedi bron 30 mlynedd o llywodraeth lafur, a yw hi'n amser I ni gael sgwrs cenedlaethol. Sut ni a chi fel llywodraeth yn gwybod be mae'r cyhoedd eisiau?
Diolch.
Diolch. Yes, go ahead.
Lovely, thank you. I just wanted to pick up the point on budgets and the fact that we don't have unlimited funds to deliver everything we want. We're a room full of leaders who have heard the narrative of there is an unlimited budget, there's unlimited money. You need to think innovation, you need to think efficiency, you need to work differently. And with respect, we've been doing this for the last at least 20 years that I remember. However, we accept the challenge. We're not finished, we're done, we're all up for it. Will this new government accept the challenge back that they need to think very innovatively about how they set their budgets, how we actually make that more effective? Because earlier in the program, we were talking about the future of future generations and their future and their well-being, and that in order to think long-term, you need to be budgeting long-term. You need to be budgeting differently. I work for the NHS, I work in the Welsh Blood Service, and we live on a 12-month budget.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, as you might imagine, challenge accepted from everything I've said. I would love to move to I'd love to move to a point 2 ways. One, that we were looking to long-term when we were setting budgets, but also we were setting 3-year budgets, yeah, at the very least, because there are some real challenges. I mean, I've seen it myself in in public sector and in the voluntary sector, where you've got sort of grants and uncertainty. That means a clarity of purpose and a clarity of long-term vision too. But I think we should definitely do that. I am not convinced my colleagues in the previous government were sufficiently focused on meaningful action and outcomes. And it was a case we made, and it was a case that was heard by lots of people, and a case of conversations with colleagues who were in the previous government who said, oh yeah, you're damn right about that, privately. But so I think there is more we can achieve despite the challenging circumstances. And part of that then comes back to the question around outcomes, and if we're going to say something in 2040, great, but you need measurable outcomes along the way, and that comes back then to our data and our dashboards and being clear to people. I was also really struck conversations with Scotland and Northern Ireland yesterday about how we build community cohesion and how we may learn from some of the excellent work that has been done, and it doesn't feel like that today, but over the years, Belfast today is a very different place to the Belfast I went to 25 years ago. So there is possibility. Os angen sgwrs genedlaethol, dwi'n credu I fod a wy'n credu bod hwnna'n bwysig tu hwnt, achos rhywsut oedd na deimlad yn sicr pan sefydlwyd y Senedd, y cynulliad a datganoli, bod pethau'n mynd I wella, bod y dinesydd yn mynd I fod wrth wraidd y sgyrsiau yna. Dyw hynny ddim bob amser wedi digwydd. Mae angen symbolu'r sgwrs yna, ond nôl I rai o'r pwyntiau genefach, dyw hwnna ddim yn sgwrs, mae'n sgwrs byddwn ni'n awyddus I symbolu, ond mae'n sgwrs i'r bobl ac I ni, ac nid I fi. A dyna'r her. So I think in conclusion, Charlotte, I'm energized. I said to my private office when I turned up that what I hoped to have was serious fun on a day-to-day basis. What we do is serious. There are major challenges ahead, but if we can't do that with a little lightness of touch and with a sense of good vibes and good purpose, then we're not going to keep going for that longer term vision. So that's what I'm hoping to do, but I'm hoping to do all of that with each and every one of you. Diolch yn fawr iawn.